A police captain's son was dying. Not from a bullet. Not from a crash. From something slower, quieter, and far more invisible than either of those things. A rare blood disease eating him from the inside out, cell by cell, day by day. Only one blood type could save him. AB negative. Less than 1% of the population carries it. And for 2 years, 24 months straight, one man showed up every single month at the same hospital blood bank, rolled up his sleeve, gave what his body had, then went back to work mopping floors and checking IDs in the same building, 3 floors below the child he was keeping alive. He had no idea whose veins his blood was flowing through. And the captain, a man who had spent 23 years wearing a badge in Atlanta, Georgia, a man who had arrested hundreds of people, written thousands of citations, and built a career on the idea that he was the one who protected this city, had no idea that the only thing keeping his son breathing was a man he had allowed his sergeant to stop, handcuff, and humiliate on the side of a highway 2 years earlier. Then one night, he found out. He found out everything. And the man who had been saving his child for 2 years was right there, on his knees, scrubbing someone else's blood off a hospital floor. What the captain did next would either change everything, or prove that some men are too proud to survive the truth. 2 years before any of this happened, Amara finished a 12-hour night shift and did not go home. His feet taken, shoes worn past the point of replacement 5 months ago. His hands were dry and cracked from hospital-grade disinfectant, the kind that kills everything on your skin, including the skin itself. His scrubs had faded from navy to something closer to gray. He smelled like bleach and floor wax and other people's pain. It was 7:14 in the morning. He should have gone home. Instead, he turned left at the lobby of Mercy Children's Medical Center in Atlanta, Georgia, walked past the cafeteria, past the gift shop, down the hallway most people in the building had never noticed, and pushed open the door to the blood bank. The nurse at the desk looked up and smiled. She knew him by now. Back again, every month, like clockwork. Amara sat down in the donation chair the way most people sit down at a coffee shop. Casual, routine. Like giving away a piece of yourself was just another Tuesday. The nurse tied the rubber band around his arm and tapped for a vein. "You know," she said while prepping the needle, "your blood type is something special. AB negative. Less than 1% of people have it. We are always short on it. Always. There are maybe a handful of regular donors in this entire city with your type, and most of them do not show up every month the way you do." Amara watched the needle slide in, watched his blood darken warm, begin filling the bag. He did not flinch. He never did. "Do you ever wonder who gets it?" the nurse asked. "Your blood, I mean. We cannot tell you, obviously. Donor anonymity. Once it leaves here, it gets processed, typed, cross-matched, and sent wherever it is needed most. You will never know whose body it ends up in, and they will never know it came from you." Amara shook his head slowly. "I do not need to know," he said. "My mother used to say something back home in Ghana. She said blood is the one thing rich and poor share equally. When you give it, you give life itself." He said it the way some people say prayers. Not dramatic. Not trying to be deep. Just stating something he believed down to his bones. The nurse finished the draw, labeled the bag, placed it in the cooler. Amara's blood would be tested, processed, and delivered to a patient within 48 hours. That was the system. Anonymous. Efficient. Invisible. One person gives. Another person receives. And neither one ever knows the other exists. Amara pressed the cotton ball against the inside of his elbow and held it there. He had done this 7 times before today. 7 months of quiet giving. He did not do it for recognition. Did not do it for money. There was no money. Blood donation is free. You give it, they take it. And the only payment is a cookie and a small cup of orange juice that Amara always accepted because he had learned it a long time ago, ever to turn down free food. He sat in the recovery chair for the required 15 minutes, drank his juice, ate his cookie, stood up, put his worn jacket back on, and walked out the same way he had walked in, quietly, without anyone watching. He did not know whose veins his blood would flow through. He did not need to know, but if he had known, everything about his life would have been different. "Stay with me," Because the child receiving Amara's blood right now is connected to a name that will change everything about this story. Amara worked the night shift at Mercy Children's Medical Center, 7 in the evening to 7 in the morning, 5 nights a week. Sometimes 6 when he needed the overtime, which was most weeks. His official title was Certified Nursing Assistant, the lowest rung on the hospital ladder. He made $15.40 an hour. After taxes, that came to about $2,100 a month. In Atlanta, where rent for a one-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood costs more than that. His job was simple, at least on paper. Change bed linens, empty bedpans, wipe down surfaces, take vital signs, help patients eat, help them to the bathroom, help them do the things that sickness had stolen from them. A certified nursing assistant is the person who touches patients the most and gets paid the least. Doctors see patients for minutes. Nurses see them for segments of their shift. But nursing assistants live in those rooms. They are the ones who hear the crying at 3 in the morning. The ones who hold the child's hand when the parents have gone home to sleep. The ones who notice when something changes in a patient's breathing before any monitor picks it up. And they are invisible. Not metaphorically. Literally invisible. Doctors walked past Amara every single night like he was furniture. Nurses gave him instructions without looking up from their charts. Patients' families sometimes spoke about him while he was standing right there as if he could not hear them. He was background noise. A body that mopped and lifted and wiped so that the important people could do their important work. His supervisor, a man named Dale Pruitt, ran the night operations with the energy of a man who believed efficiency was a religion and compassion was a waste of billable minutes. You are a nursing assistant, Amara, not a therapist. Clean the room and move on. He had said that 3 weeks ago when he caught Amara sitting with a 6-year-old who could not sleep. The child had been crying. Amara had been telling her a story about a river in Ghana that turns gold at sunrise. Dale had written him up without hesitation. You have 14 rooms to turn over tonight, Dale had said, not looking at him. I do not care if the kid is crying. That is what nurses are for. You are here to clean. Do your job or I will find someone who will. Amara had not argued. He had learned it a long time ago that arguing with people who had power over your paycheck was a luxury he could not afford. Not when his mother needed him. Gloria Webb was 67 years old and she was dying slowly. Chronic kidney disease. Stage 4. She needed dialysis 3 times a week. Even with insurance, which Amara had barely managed to get through the hospital, the out-of-pocket costs were crushing. Co-pays, medications, transportation to the dialysis center, the special diet Gloria needed but could not always afford. It added up to about $3,000 a month. Money Amara did not have. Money he made anyway, somehow, by picking up every extra shift, by eating 1 meal a day, by wearing shoes until the soles came apart. He never told anyone at work about his mother, never complained, never asked for help. He just showed up, did his job, gave his blood once a month, and went home. Every morning at 7:30, Amara walked out of the hospital and headed for the bus stop to Block C. And every morning he passed the same billboard on Peachtree Street. A large photograph of a man in a police dress uniform. Captain Raymond Holt, Atlanta Police Department, District 7. The tagline read, "Protecting our community, every day." Every day. Amara walked past that billboard every single day without a second glance. He did not know that Captain Holt had a son in the very hospital he had just left. And he certainly did not know that the child on the 7th floor, the one hooked up to blood transfusion bags once a month, was alive because of what flowed out of his veins every 30 days. He just walked, head down, jacket pulled tight. Another invisible man heading home in a city that had never once asked his name. This is the part of the story where 2 worlds exist in the same building, separated by 3 floors and everything else that separates people in this country. 3 floors above where Amara gave his blood every month, a different world existed. A world that smelled like fresh flowers instead of disinfectant. A world where the hospital rooms had leather recliners and a view of Piedmont Park that most Atlantans would never see from that angle. This was the private PD at Requing. And in room 714, A 9-year-old boy named Tyler Holt was watching cartoons at 2 in the afternoon while a bag of dark red blood dripped slowly into his small arm. His father sat beside him, Captain Raymond Holt, 47 years old, 23 years on the Atlanta Police Department, decorated officer, District 7 commander, a man whose face was on a billboard, a man who had shaken hands with the mayor for times, a man who believed, genuinely uncompletely, that he was one of the good ones, and his son was dying. Tyler had autoimmune hemolytic anemia, a condition where the body turns against itself. The immune system, which is supposed to protect you, starts attacking your own red blood cells, destroying them from the inside. Without regular blood transfusions, Tyler's body could not carry enough oxygen. His organs would begin to fail slowly at first, then all at once. The transfusions were the only thing keeping him alive. 1 bag of AB-negative blood every month, matched to his exact type. Without it, his hemoglobin would drop to dangerous levels within weeks. Raymond watched the blood drip, watched it enter his son's arm, watched the color slowly return to Tyler's face. And he felt the same thing he felt every single month in this room. Rage. Not at anyone, not at anything he could fight. Just rage at the universe for making him this helpless. Dr. Lorraine Carter walked in. She was the head of pediatric hematology, brilliant. Calm in the way that only doctors who have seen the worst can be calm. "How is he responding today?" Raymond asked, without looking away from the IV drip. "His numbers should stabilize within 24 hours. Same as last month." Raymond leaned forward. "How is it possible that I command a district of 400 officers, and I cannot find a reliable blood donor for my own son?" Dr. Carter looked at him, not with pity, with patience, because blood does not care about rank, Captain Holt. It only cares about compatibility. AB negative is the rarest type. Less than 1% of the population. We cannot manufacture it. We cannot synthesize it. And we cannot force people to donate it. All we can do is hope that the right person keeps showing up. Raymond stared at the blood bag. Someone else's blood. A stranger's blood. The only thing between his son and a slow death. "Who donates this?" he asked. "Is it the same person every time?" Dr. Carter paused. "Donor information is confidential, Captain. The blood bank operates on strict anonymity. It protects the donor from outside pressure, and it protects the integrity of the system. I am not asking to pressure anyone. I want to thank them. I want to make sure they keep coming back." Dr. Carter set down her chart. "I understand your concern, and I can tell you this much. Your son's primary donor has been consistent for over 18 months. The same person, every month, without fail, without being asked, without knowing whose blood they are giving or why." Raymond's jaw tightened. 18 months. Someone had been saving his son's life for a year and a half, and he did not even know their name. "And I cannot know who they are?" "No, you cannot." Dr. Carter turned back to her computer. On the screen, a file. A donor profile. A name she recognized because she saw it every month when the blood bank processed the donation. She looked at the name. Then she closed the file. "He will be back next month," she said quietly. "He always comes back." Raymond did not catch the pronoun. He was too focused on his son, too focused on the blood bag, too focused on the terrible, humbling reality that all his authority, all his rank, all his connections could not do what one anonymous stranger was doing for free. If you are already invested in this story, do not go anywhere, because what is about to happen in this building will change everything you think you know about who protects whom in this city. It was a Tuesday night, 11:47 in the evening. The 7th floor was quiet, the way hospitals get quiet after midnight. Not silent, never silent. There is always the hum of machines, the soft beep of monitors, the distant sound of someone's television left on to low to hear the words, but loud enough to know it is there. Amara pushed his cleaning cart down the hallway, room by room. Wipe, mop, check the trash, restock the hand sanitizer, move on. He had done this 1,000 times. He could do it with his eyes closed. Room 714 was next on his list. He knocked softly. No answer. He pushed the door open. The room was dark except for the blue glow of the heart monitor and a small nightlight shaped like a police badge. In the bed, a small boy sat upright against the pillows, wide awake, eyes big and dark and frightened. "Hey there." Amara kept his voice low. "You okay, buddy?" The boy looked at him, studied his face. He was thin in the way sick children are thin, not from hunger, but from the disease that was slowly stealing his body's ability to make the blood it needed. "I cannot sleep," he whispered. "The beeping is too loud and I keep thinking about bad things." Amara looked at the door. He had 13 more rooms to clean tonight. Dale Pruitt would check his progress at 1 in the morning. He was already behind schedule. Instead, he parked his cart in the hallway, walked back into the room, and sat down in the chair next to the boy's bed. "What is your name?" he asked. "Tyler." "Well, Tyler, I am Amara. How about I stay for a few minutes, just until you feel sleepy? Would that be okay?" Tyler nodded. Small, grateful. Amara told him about the Volta River in Ghana, about how the water looks different at night than it does at noon, about the fishermen who go out before sunrise and come back with nets full of silver, about his grandmother who used to say the river remembers every person who has ever been kind to it. Tyler listened. His eyes got heavy. But before he fell asleep, he reached under his pillow and pulled out a piece of paper. A drawing. Crayon on printer paper. The kind of art only a child can make. "This is the blood man," he said, holding it up. Amara looked at it. A stick figure. Brown skin, big hands, holding a red heart. "The blood man?" Amara asked. "He comes every month." Tyler pointed to the IV pole next to his bed, where the empty blood bag from his last transfusion still hung. "I do not know who he is, but my dad says someone gives me their blood so I can be strong. I call him the blood man. He makes me feel better." Amara felt something shift in his chest. Something warm. Something painful. "Do you think the blood man knows he is saving me?" Tyler asked, his voice getting softer as sleep pulled him closer. Amara looked at this child. This small, brave boy with his crayon drawings and his police badge nightlightened his body, that was fighting a war it could not win alone. "I am sure he does, buddy. And I am sure he is happy to do it." Tyler smiled, closed his eyes. Within a minute, he was asleep. Amara sat there a moment longer, looking at the drawing, looking at the empty blood bag. He did not connect them. How could he? He was just a nursing assistant who cleaned rooms and gave blood separately in different parts of the same building, never knowing that those two acts were part of the same story. He tucked the blanket around Tyler's shoulders, set the drawing on his bedside table, and quietly pushed his cart back into the hallway. Amara had no idea that the child he was tucking in was the same child he had been saving for 19 months. And he had no idea that in 5 months, the truth would come out in a way that would crack both their worlds wide open. Now, to understand what happens next, you need to understand something about Amara's past. Because this story is not just about blood. It is about what happens when a system decides a man is not worth seeing. Amara came to the United States from Accra, Ghana, when he was 22 years old. He came with a student visa, a full scholarship to Georgia State University, and a dream of becoming a physician. He was pre-med. He was brilliant. His organic chemistry professor told him in his second year that he had the sharpest analytical mind she had seen in a decade of teaching. Then, in his third year, his mother got sick. Gloria's kidneys were failing. Both of them. The dialysis costs alone were staggering. Amara did the math over and over on the floor of his dorm room at 2 in the morning. He could not afford tuition in his mother's treatment. He could afford one, not both. He dropped out. He became a certified nursing assistant because it was the fastest certification he could get, because hospitals were always hiring, because the pay was enough to cover Gloria's co-pays if Amara ever spent money on anything else, and because it kept him inside a hospital, even if he was not a doctor, even if he would never be one now. He was still there, still in the building where healing happened, still close enough to touch it, even if he could not practice it. Some people would have been bitter. Amara was not because he did not feel the loss. He felt it every single day, every time a doctor gave an order he could have given, Every time he stood in an elevator next to residents wearing white coats he should have been wearing. But his mother had taught him something that kept the bitterness from taking root. When Amara was 14, Gloria had taken him to a blood drive at the community center in Accra. It was his first time donating. He was nervous, scared of the needle, scared of the blood. Gloria had held his hand and said something he would carry with him for the rest of his life. Blood is the one thing rich and poor share equally. When you give it, you give life itself. Amara had been donating ever since. In Accra, in Atlanta, in every city he had ever passed through, not because anyone asked, not because he got paid, but because he had AB negative blood and he knew what that meant. It meant he was rare. It meant his blood was always needed. And it meant that every time he sat in that chair and opened his vein, someone somewhere would live who might not have lived otherwise. He did not know who. He did not need to know. That was the point. But here is the part of this story that most people never talk about. Because what happened to Amara on a Thursday evening in October, 2 years before this story begins, is the reason everything that follows matters so much. Amara was driving home from a double shift. His car, a 2009 Honda Civic with a cracked taillight he had been meaning to fix for 3 weeks, was heading south on Interstate 85. He was tired. He was hungry. He was thinking about whether he had enough in his account to cover his mother's medication refill. He was not speeding. He was not swerving. He was doing exactly 62 miles per hour in a 65 zone. The blue lights came on behind him at 9:47 in the evening. 2 patrol cars. Not 1, 2. Amara pulled over immediately, put both hands on the steering wheel, turned on the interior light, did everything right, everything he had been taught to do, everything a black man in America learns before he learns to drive. The officer who approached his window was Sergeant Dale Pruitt, the same Dale Pruitt who supervised Amara's night shift at Mercy Children's Medical Center. The same man who had written him up for sitting with a crying 6-year-old. Pruitt did not recognize him in the dark, or if he did not show it. License and registration, Pruitt said. Not hello, not good evening. Just the demand. Amara provided both, calmly, slowly, narrating every movement. Pruitt took the documents, walked back to his cruiser, and was gone for 11 minutes. 11 minutes while Amara sat on the side of the highway with his hands visible, and his heart beating in a way he could not control no matter how calm his face looked. When Pruitt came back, he did not return the documents. Step out of the vehicle. May I ask why, officer? Step out of the vehicle. Now, Amara stepped out. He was told to put his hands on the roof. He was patted down. He was told to sit on the guardrail while the second officer searched his car without asking permission, without explaining why, without a warrant. They found nothing, because there was nothing to find. Pruitt wrote him 3 citations. Defective equipment for the cracked taillight. Failure to maintain lane, which had not happened. An obstruction because Amara had asked why he was being pulled over. The total fines came to $417. Amara paid them. Not because he was guilty, because fighting them would have cost more in missed shifts and legal fees than the fines themselves. Because he knew how that particular math worked. What Amara did not know, what he had no way of knowing, was that Sergeant Dale Pruitt reported directly to Captain Raymond Holt. The same Captain Holt whose son was on the 7th floor of Mercy Children's Medical Center. The same Captain Holt whose son was alive because of the blood in Amara's veins. And when Pruitt filed his conduct report that night, Raymond Holt had signed off on it without reading a single word. 2 men in the same city, connected by blood, separated by everything else, and the reckoning was still coming. It was a Thursday, 3:47 in the afternoon. And on the 7th floor of Mercy Children's Medical Center, something was going very wrong. Tyler Holt had been fine that morning. He had eaten breakfast. He had drawn pictures. He had asked his father when he could go home. The same question he asked every day. By noon, Tyler's skin had turned the color of old paper. His eyes, usually bright and restless, had gone dull. His breathing was shallow, fast, wrong. Dr. Carter was paged at 1:15. By 1:30, she was in the room reading his blood panel. And her face told Raymond everything he needed to know before she said a single word. "He is in hemolytic crisis," Dr. Carter said. "His body is destroying red blood cells faster than we have ever seen. His hemoglobin is at 5.2 and dropping." "What does that mean?" Raymond asked. Even though some part of him already knew, it means his organs are not getting enough oxygen. If we do not get his hemoglobin up within the next 6 hours, we are looking at organ failure, starting with his kidneys, then his heart. Raymond gripped the bed rail. His knuckles went white. "Then transfuse him. Do it now. We do not have the blood, Captain Holt." Those 5 words landed like a physical blow. "What do you mean you do not have the blood?" "AB negative is the rarest blood type in the country. Less than 1% of Americans carry it. The national blood supply is critically low right now, especially for rare types. We have contacted every regional blood bank within 200 miles. Nobody has AB negative in stock. Nobody." Raymond stared at her. "This is a $400 million hospital. You are telling me you cannot find a bag of blood?" "I am telling you that rank cannot create blood that does not exist," Dr. Carter said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were not. "We have exactly 0 units of AB negative on hand. The only reliable donor we have had for the past 2 years." She stopped. She did not finish the sentence. "What?" Raymond pressed. "The only donor what?" Dr. Carter looked at him, then at Tyler, then at the monitor showing his son's hemoglobin dropping in real time. "I will make some calls," she said quietly, and left the room. What Dr. Carter almost said would have changed everything, but she held her tongue, and that silence nearly cost Tyler his life. It was 9:42 in the evening when Amara heard about it. He was on the 3rd floor restocking supply closets when 2 nurses came around the corner talking in the urgent clip tones that hospital staff use when something is going badly. "Pediatric private wing on 7. 9-year-old in hemolytic crisis. They need AB negative and nobody has it. They have been calling blood banks all day." "Nothing." The other nurse shook her head. "That poor kid. If they do not find a match by midnight, they are talking about emergency exchange transfusion. And even that is a long shot without the right type." They turned the corner and were gone. They had not noticed Amara standing there with an armful of bed sheets. "AB negative." Amara set the sheets down slowly. His heart was beating in a way it had not beaten in a long time. Not fast, not panicked, but loud, deep. The way it beats when you know something with absolute certainty. He had AB negative blood. He had donated 3 weeks ago. The guidelines say you need to wait at least 56 days between donations. He was at 21. Donating now would be early. Too early. His iron levels might not have recovered. He could get dizzy. He could faint. In rare cases, donating too frequently can cause serious anemia, the kind that puts the donor in a hospital bed. Amara knew all of this. He had been donating long enough to know the rules by heart. He also knew that somewhere above him, a child was dying because nobody in this entire city had what he had. He walked to the blood bank and pushed open the door. The same nurse who always drew his blood looked up surprised. "Amara, you are not due for another 5 weeks." "I know. I am here because I heard you need AB negative. I have it. Take mine." The nurse shook her head. "I cannot. You donated 3 weeks ago. Your hemoglobin might not be high enough. If I draw you now, and your levels crash, I am putting you at risk. There are protocols." "I know the rules," Amara said. His voice was calm, steady. The voice of a man who had made his decision before he walked through the door. "I also know that somewhere in this hospital, a child is dying because nobody has what I have. So take my blood. I will deal with the consequences." The nurse hesitated, looked at her screen, looked at Amara, then she paged Dr. Carter. Dr. Carter arrived 4 minutes later. She looked at Amara and something shifted behind her eyes. Something heavy. Something she could not say. Because Dr. Carter knew. She knew exactly where this blood was going. She knew the name of the child. She knew the name of the father. And she knew that the man standing in front of her in faded scrubs and worn shoes, offering his own blood at the cost of his own health, had been keeping that child alive for nearly 2 years without ever being told. She wanted to say it. She wanted to tell Amara everything. But the rules existed for a reason. Donor anonymity protected people like Amara from being pressured, manipulated, or exploited, and Dr. Carter had sworn an oath to uphold those rules, even when every cell in her body screamed at her to break them. "You understand the risks?" Dr. Carter asked. "I understand them. And you want to proceed?" "I need to proceed. There is a difference." Dr. Carter looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded, drew him a chair. The needle went in. Amara's blood, dark and warm and full of the antibodies that matched only one small boy 3 floors above him, began filling the bag. He closed his eyes, felt the familiar pull. The slight lightheadedness that always came when he gave too soon, too much, too often. He did not care. His mother's words moved through him like a heartbeat. Blood is the one thing rich and poor share equally. When you give it, you give life itself. 3 floors below room 714, Amara sat in a donation chair with his eyes closed and his arm extended, giving away the thing his body needed most. 3 floors above him, the blood bank called up 2 pediatrics, 1 unit of AB negative, fresh, available, ready. Dr. Carter carried the bag herself. She walked it up the stairs because the elevator was too slow. She walked into room 714, where Raymond Holt sat beside his son, holding the boy's small hand, his face gray with the kind of fear that a badge cannot fix. She hung the bag, connected the line, started the drip. Raymond watched the blood enter his son's arm, dark red, warm, somebody else's life flowing into his child. Tyler's breathing slowed first, not in a bad way, in the way that happens when a body finally gets what it needs. His color started to shift, the waxy gray fading to something warmer, something alive. His fingers, which had been cold to the touch for hours, began to warm. Rahman pressed his forehead against his son's hand. He did not speak. He could not. The relief was so enormous, it had taken his language away. 3 floors below, Amara was lying in the recovery chair. The room was spinning slightly. His arms felt heavy. The nurse had given him juice and crackers and strict instructions not to move for 30 minutes. He was dizzy, tired. His body was telling him he had given too much too soon. He lay there in the quiet of the blood bank, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the refrigeration units. He did not know that his blood was at that very moment pulling a 9-year-old boy back from the edge. He did not know that the boy's father was crying 3 floors above his head. He did not know that the drawing of the blood man was sitting on Tyler's bedside table right next to the IV pole that held the bag with his name on it. He just lay there, dizzy and tired, and quietly certain that he had done the right thing. 2 people in the same building, connected by blood, separated by 3 floors and a wall of anonymity that was about to crack wide open. The next morning, Raymond Holt was in Dr. Carter's office before she had even finished her coffee. "I need to know who the donor is." He said it like a man who was used to getting answers, like a man who had spent 23 years giving orders. Dr. Carter set her cup down. She did not flinch. "You know I cannot do that, Captain Holt. My son almost died last night. He almost died because we ran out of blood. And you are telling me there is one person, one single person in this entire city who has been keeping him alive for 2 years. And I am not allowed to know their name?" "That is exactly what I am telling you." Raymond stood up, paced to the window, paced back. He was a man who solved problems for a living. And right now, the thing he needed to solve was the gap between his son's survival and a name he was not allowed to hear. "There are laws around this," Dr. Carter continued. "Donor anonymity is not a suggestion. It is a federal protection. It exists because without it, donors get pressured. They get harassed. They get guilt-tripped into giving more than their bodies can safely handle. The system works because donors trust that their privacy will be respected. If we break that trust, donors stop coming. And if donors stop coming, children like Tyler die." Raymond turned to face her. "I am not going to pressure anyone. I want to thank them. I want to make sure my son has a reliable source going forward. And I understand that," Dr. Carter said. "But what you want does not override what they are entitled to." This person chose to donate anonymously. That means they chose not to be found. And respecting that choice is not optional. Not for you. Not for anyone. Rahman's jaw tightened. He pulled out his phone. I have connections at every blood bank in this city. I can find out through other channels. Dr. Carter looked at him steadily. And if you do that, Captain, you will be using your authority to violate a federal privacy protection. You will be doing exactly what your badge is supposed to prevent. Is that the kind of officer you are? The question landed like a slap. Rahman put his phone away. His hands were shaking. Not from anger, from something worse. From the realization that for the first time in a very long time, there was something his rank genuinely could not override. He left without another word. Raymond could not use his badge to get the answer. But he was about to stumble into it in a way that would shatter every assumption he had ever made about who protects a community and who gets protected in return. The same way Raymond was trying to use his connections to find a name, Amara was sitting in a different office getting news that would break him. His mother's Jules was a kind man with tired eyes who delivered bad news the way all good doctors do, gently, but without false hope. Gloria's kidneys were done, both of them. Stage 5, end-stage renal disease. Dialysis was no longer enough. She needed a transplant. Without one, the doctor said she had maybe 6 months, maybe less. Amara sat in the plastic chair and listened and did not cry. Not yet. He saved that for later. The numbers hit him like a wall. A kidney transplant costs between $250,000 and $400,000. Insurance would cover a portion, but Gloria's coverage had gaps. Big ones. After everything was calculated, co-pays, medications, post-surgical care, rehabilitation, Amara was looking at roughly $120,000 out of pocket. He made $15.40 an hour. He had $2,300 in savings. He did not have a credit card. He did not own property. He had nothing to borrow against and no one to borrow from. That night, he sat at his kitchen table with a calculator and a legal pattern, trying to make the math work. He could pick up more shifts. He could work 7 days a week. He could stop eating lunch. He could do all of those things and still not have enough. And then another thought crept in, a quieter one, a colder one. He could stop donating blood, not permanently, just for now. His body was still recovering from the early donation. He had been tired for weeks, dizzy sometimes. His iron was low. The blood bank nurse had told him to take it easy, wait the full 56 days before coming back. If he kept pushing himself, kept donating on top of working double shifts, his own health would collapse. And if he collapsed, there would be nobody to take care of Gloria. But if he stopped donating somewhere in this hospital, the child with AB-negative blood would have one less option, one less chance, one less month of guaranteed survival. He was choosing between his mother's life and the stranger's child. Amara drove to the dialysis center the next morning. Gloria was in her chair, hooked up to the machine that cleaned her blood 3 times a week because her kidneys no longer could. She looked smaller than she had last month, thinner, more fragile. Amara told her about the transplant, about the cost, about the impossible math. He did not tell his mother about the blood. But Gloria knew. Mothers always know. You are thinking about stopping, are you not? She said. Amara looked away. Mama, I need to focus on you right now. Do not you dare stop giving blood because of me. Amara. Gloria's voice was weak, but the words had iron in them. The day you stop giving is the day you stop being who you are. But Mama, I cannot lose you. You will not lose me. Gloria reached out and took his hand. Her grip was fragile, but her eyes were fierce. But do not save me by letting someone else's child die. That is not who I raised. That is not who you are. Amara held his mother's hand and did not say anything, because there was nothing to say that would not be a lie. That night at 3 a.m, Amara sat in his car in the hospital parking lot. The engine was off. The windows were full. He had just finished a 12-hour shift, and he was so tired his bones ached, he cried. Not the pretty kind of crying, the ugly kind. The kind where your whole body shakes and you cannot breathe and you press your face into the steering wheel and you make sounds that do not belong in a language. He cried because he was broken. His mother was dying, and he was exhausted, and nobody in the world knew his name. He cried because he had given away his blood 24 times and never once been thanked, and he did not want to be thanked. But he also did not want to be invisible anymore. And he hated himself for wanting that, because wanting recognition for kindness felt like it made the kindness less real. He cried in the dark in an empty parking lot at 3 in the morning, and nobody saw him. Nobody ever saw him. It was 1:13 in the morning on a Tuesday when Raymond Holt's world broke open. He had come to the hospital and announced, could not sleep, could not stop thinking about the hemolytic crisis, could not stop hearing Dr. Carter's voice saying, "We do not have the blood." So he had driven to Mercy Children's in the middle of the night to sit with Tyler, to watch him breathe, to count the rises and falls of his small chest and convince himself his son was still alive. He was walking from the elevator toward the private wing when he passed the blood bank. The door was ajar. The hallway was empty, and two nurses inside were talking. He would not have stopped. He would not have listened. But one of them said a name that caught his ear. Amara is back again. 3rd time this month he has come in to check on the schedule. Wants to make sure he is set for his next donation. The other nurse laughed softly. That man is something else. He is the only AB negative regular we have got. Has been for 2 years now. Shows up like clockwork. Never misses. Even came in early last month when we had that emergency. Raymond stopped walking. He is the reason that Holt kid is still here, you know. Would have died 3 times over without him. 24 donations in 24 months. All anonymous. He has never once asked who it goes to. Raymond stood in that hallway like a man who had been hit by something he could not see. His feet would not move. His heart was beating so loud he was sure the nurses could hear it. Amara. AB negative. 20 for donations. The Holt kid. His son. His son's blood. His son's life. Amen named Amara. Raymond's mind started racing. He knew that name, not personally. Not the way you know someone you have spoken to, but the way you know a face you have seen 100 times without registering it. Amara. The name on a badge he had glanced at and forgotten. The man with the cleaning cart who was always there and never visible. He walked away from the blood bank. Slowly, quietly. His hands were trembling. He turned a corner. Then another. Following the distant squeak of wheels on tile, until he reached the 3rd floor east corridor. And there he was. Amara was on his knees on the floor, cleaning. A patient in room 312 had had a nosebleed. A bad one, and there was blood on the linoleum. Amara was on his hands and knees scrubbing it out with a rag and a bottle of hydrogen peroxide. Raymond stood at the end of the hallway and watched him. He watched his hands. The blue knit-roll gloves stretched tight over fingers that were already cracked beneath them. His knees on the wet floor. His movements methodical and careful. The way someone works when they take pride in even the smallest task. He did not know Raymond was there. And Raymond realized, standing in that empty hallway at 1 in the morning, that he had walked past this man hundreds of times. Hundreds. He had walked past him in the lobby, in the elevator, in the hallway outside his son's room. He had looked through him the way you look through glass. He was background. He was furniture. He was nobody. And he was the reason his son was alive. Then Raymond thought about something else. Something he had not thought about in 2 years. A conduct report he had signed without reading. A sergeant named Dale Pruitt. A black man in a Honda Civic on Interstate 85. $417 in fines. The man on his knees in front of him. Raymond Holt had spent 23 years wearing a badge that was supposed to represent protection. And his son was alive because of a man his department had stopped, searched, and fined for the crime of driving home from a night shift. He stood there for a very long time. He did not speak. He did not do anything except stand there and feel something open up inside his chest that he did not have a word for. Something between shame and gratitude and the terrible, humbling realization that the most important person in his son's life had been invisible to him for 2 years. Not just invisible, worse than invisible. He had been seen, dismissed, and punished. Raymond turned around and walked away. It was not the right time. He did not have the right words. He did not know what to say, or how to say it, or whether anything he could say would ever be enough. But everything had changed. Everything. Raman did not sleep that night. He went home and sat in the dark and thought about a man on his knees. The next morning he called Dr. Carter. His voice was different this time, quieter, stripped of the authority and the certainty that had defined every conversation he had ever had in a position of power. "I know who the donor is." Silence on the other end. "I did not use my badge. I did not make calls. I overheard two nurses talking. They did not know I was there. His name is Amara. He is a nursing assistant in your hospital." Dr. Carter exhaled slowly. "Captain Holt, I need you to understand something. He does not know. He does not know it is your son. He does not know whose blood he has been giving. He comes in every month and donates and goes back to work and never asks a single question." "I know," Raman said. "I watched him last night. He was cleaning the floor." There was a long pause. Then Dr. Carter spoke, and her voice carried a weight Raymond had not heard before. "There are things you should know about him. Things I can share because they are not medical records, and because frankly you need to understand who this man is before you decide what to do next," she told him. Not the medical details, not the donor file, but the things anyone at the hospital could have told him if he had ever bothered to ask. That Amara had been a pre-med student, that he had dropped out in his third year to pay for his mother's kidney treatment, that his mother was now in stage 5 renal failure and needed a transplant, that Amara worked double shift to cover the dialysis co-pays, that he had been donating blood since he was a teenager, that he had donated early during the crisis against medical advice, at risk to his own health, because he heard there was a child who needed AB negative and he could not walk past that need without stopping. He did not know it was Tyler, Dr. Carter said quietly. He just heard a child was in trouble. That was all he needed to hear. And then Dr. Carter said the thing that Raymond had not known. The thing that changed everything. "You should also know, Captain, that the officer who stopped him 2 years ago on Interstate 85, the one who wrote him 3 citations for $417, was Sergeant Dale Pruitt, who reports directly to you, and whose conduct report you signed without reading." The line went very quiet. Raman sat in his office and thought about a man who earned less in a year than Raymond spent on Tyler's hospital room upgrades. A man who had given up his dream of being a doctor to save his mother. A man who gave away his blood every month, even though it made him sick. A man who cleaned the floors of the hospital where Raymond's son slept, and who had been stopped, searched, and fined by Raymond's own sergeant, and who had never once mentioned that he was the reason the child was alive. Raman Holt had spent 23 years believing he was one of the good ones. He was not sure he believed that anymore. It was 6-7 in the morning. Atlanta, in November. The kind of cold that finds the gaps in your clothing unsettles into your bones. The sky was still dark. The parking lot lights cast long yellow pools on the asphalt. Amara walked out of the hospital the same way he always did. Head down, thin jacket pulled tight, bag over one shoulder, moving fast because the bus came at 6:20. He did not see the man leaning against the black car near the east exit. "Excuse me." Amara stopped, turned, looked at the man. Expensive coat, tired eyes, hands in his pockets. "Are you Amara?" The tightness in his chest came immediately. When strangers know your full name, it is rarely good news. "Yes." "Who are you?" Raymond did not answer the question. "Not yet." Instead, he asked one. "Why do you do it?" Amara blinked. "Do what?" "Donate blood every month for 2 years." "Why?" The tightness turned to ice. "How do you know about that?" "Please." Raymond's voice was quiet, almost careful, like a man handling something fragile. "I am not here to cause trouble. I just need to understand. Why do you do it?" Amara studied his face. He was good at reading people. You learn that when you spend your nights caring for children who cannot tell you what hurts. This man was not threatening. He was something else. He was barely holding himself together. "Because I can," Amara said simply. "I have a rare blood type, AB negative. There are not many of us, and people die when the supply runs out. So I show up. That is all, Raymond repeated. That is all? He was quiet for a moment. Steam from his breath rose and disappeared. My name is Raymond Holt. I have a son named Tyler. He is 9 years old. He has been a patient at this hospital for over 2 years. He has a condition that destroys his red blood cells. Without regular transfusions, he dies. And the only blood type that matches his is AB negative. Amara felt the ground shift under his feet. For 24 months, Raman continued. One person has been keeping my son alive. One donor. The same person every single month. Anonymous. Consistent. Never missed once. The hospital would not tell me who. They could not. Donor confidentiality. He looked at Amara. It is you. You are the one. The parking lot was very quiet. A car passed on the street. Somewhere a bird called out in the dark. Amara stood perfectly still. Your son, he said. What room is he in? 714. 7th floor. Private wing. The room with the police badge nightlight. Raman's breath caught. I clean his room on the night shift, Amara said. His voice was barely above a whisper now. He cannot sleep sometimes. I tell him stories. Raman's face changed. Something behind his eyes collapsed. He talks about a blood man, Amara said, and his voice was shaking now. He calls the blood bag the blood man. He drew a picture once. A stick figure with brown skin and big hands holding a red heart. He said the blood man comes every month and makes him feel better. He looked at Raymond. His eyes were wet. The blood man. That is me. I am the blood man. Raymond nodded. He could not speak. Amara pressed his hand against his mouth. He stood there in a hospital parking lot at 6 in the morning in a thin jacket in the freezing cold, and felt 24 months of anonymous giving suddenly become real. Not a bag of blood in a cooler. Not a number in a database. A child. A specific child. A boy with dark eyes and a police badge nightlight, who could not sleep in the dark and called him the blood man and drew pictures of someone he had never met, who kept him alive. And that someone was him. Had always been him. I did not save your son, Mr. Holt, Amara said through tears. I just gave blood. Anyone with AB negative could have done the same. But they did not. Raman's voice broke. For 24 months, nobody else showed up. Only you. He stepped forward. And then Raymond Holt, a man with 23 years on the force. A man whose face was on a billboard, reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a document. A single sheet of paper. Official letterhead, Atlanta Police Department, Internal Affairs Division. 2 years ago, Raymond said, his voice raw, one of my sergeants stopped you on Interstate 85. He searched your car without cause. He wrote you 3 citations totaling $417. The citations were not legitimate. The stop was pretextual. And I signed off on Pruitt's conduct report without reading it because I trusted him and because I did not think it mattered. He held out the document. This is a formal finding of misconduct against Sergeant Dale Pruitt. He has been suspended without pay pending termination proceedings. The $417 has been refunded with interest. And I have submitted a formal complaint against myself to the Civilian Oversight Board for failure to supervise. Amara stared at the paper. Did not take it. That is not enough, he said quietly. I know, Raman said. I know it is not enough. Nothing I do will be enough, but I am asking you to tell me what would come close. Amara was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the hospital behind him, at the building he entered every night and left every morning, at the place where he mopped floors and changed sheets and held children's hands and was never once seen by the people who ran the city around it. You want to thank me, he said. Then change how your officers treat people like me. Not just me. Every black man driving home from a night shift. Every immigrant who knows better than to argue with a badge. Every person who gets stopped and searched and fined for the crime of existing in the wrong neighborhood at the wrong time. You build a career on the idea that you protect this community. But there are people in this community right now who are afraid of your officers, who budget for fines the way other people budget for groceries, who teach their children how to survive a traffic stop before they teach them how to drive. He met Raman's eyes. You want to do something? Start there. Raman stood in the cold. looking at a man who had just turned down an apology and demanded something harder. A man who did not want his gratitude. He wanted accountability, not for himself, for everyone like him. And for the first time in 23 years, Raymond Holt felt the full weight of what his badge actually meant. Raymond brought Amara to the 7th floor the next afternoon. Amara had changed out of his scrubs. He was wearing the nicest clothes he owned, which was a sweater his mother had given him and a pair of clean jeans. He felt out of place in the private wing. He always did. But today was different. Today he was not there to clean. Roland opened the door to room 714. Tyler was sitting up in bed drawing. His color was good today. The last transfusion was holding. He looked up when the door opened, and his face lit up the way only a child's face can light up. "Mr. Amara, you are here in the daytime." He said it like it was the most remarkable thing in the world, because to him, Amara existed only at night. "Hi, Tyler." Amara's voice was steady, but his eyes were not. "How are you feeling today?" "Good. Better." The blood man came again. He pointed to the IV pole, at the empty bag, at the tubing that had carried Amara's blood into this child's arm. "He always comes." Raymond crouched down next to his son's bed. "Buddy, I want to tell you something. You know how you always talk about the blood man, the person who gives you blood every month?" Tyler nodded. "He makes me strong. That is right." "He does." Raymond looked at Amara, then back at his son. "Well, the blood man is here. He is standing right there." Tyler looked at Amara, then at his father, then at Amara again. A child's mind works differently than an adult's. There is no filter between understanding and expression. No social calculation. No hesitation. Tyler looked at Amara, the man who told him stories about rivers and fishermen, and at the empty blood bag, the invisible hero who kept him alive. And his eyes went wide. "You are the blood man and the story man. You are two people." Amara laughed. A short, broken sound that was half laugh and half sob. "No, sweetheart. I am just one person. I just do two things." Tyler stared at him with an expression of pure, unfiltered wonder. The kind of wonder that only exists before the world teaches you to be cynical. Then he opened his arms. Amara crossed the room and wrapped his arms around that small boy and held him the way he had held his mother and the way his mother had held him. Tight, present, like he was trying to pour everything he felt through his skin and into the child. Raymond stood behind them. He did not make a sound, but his face was ruined, tears running freely, jaw tight, hands clenched at his sides. Not because he was sad, because he was watching something sacred, and he knew it. Tyler pulled back, reached under his pillow, and pulled out a piece of paper, creased and worn from months of being slept on and carried around and shown to every nurse who came into the room. The drawing, the blood man. A stick figure with brown skin and big hands holding a red heart. He had drawn Amara long before anyone knew who he was. A child had seen him before a police captain ever did. "This is you," Tyler said, holding the drawing up to Amara. "I made it for you. I was saving it because I knew you would come one day." Amara took the drawing, held it with both hands, looked at it through tears that would not stop. A stick figure. Crayon on printer paper. Brown skin. Big hands. A red heart. It was the most valuable thing anyone had ever given him. Raymond Holt went home that night and could not sleep. Not because of worry this time, because of a sentence that kept playing in his head like a song he could not turn off. "Change how your officers treat people like me." He had spent 23 years building a career on the idea that good policing was about presence, authority, and control. He had promoted officers who were aggressive and fast. He had dismissed complaints from community members as misunderstandings. He had signed off on conduct reports without reading them because he trusted his people and because, if he was honest with himself, the people filing those complaints were not the people whose opinions shaped his career. Amara had just told him the same thing in a parking lot in the cold for free, so he changed the system. It started with Sergeant Dale Pruitt. Raymond filed a full internal affairs complaint, against Pruitt the morning after his conversation with Amara. Not a quiet administrative action. A formal, documented investigation. The kind that goes on a permanent record. The kind that cannot be buried by a friendly supervisor or dismissed by a judge on a golf course. The investigation took 6 weeks. What it found was not limited to the stop on Interstate 85. Pruitt had filed 43 conduct reports over 7 years. 31 of them involved Black or Latino drivers. 27 of those stops lacked documented probable cause. 11 prior complaints against Pruitt had been dismissed without investigation. Each one signed off by a supervisor who had since been promoted. The pattern was not an accident. It was a system. Pruitt was terminated, not suspended, terminated. His case was referred to the Fulton County District Attorney's Office for review of potential civil rights violations. 3 weeks later, a federal civil rights investigation was opened by the Department of Justice, covering not just Pruitt but the broader conduct practices of District 7 over the preceding decade. Raymond cooperated fully. He provided every document they asked for. He sat for 11 hours of interviews, over 3 days. He did not invoke his union protections. He did not call his lawyer until the investigators told him he should. When his union representative asked him why he was not fighting it, Raymond said something that ended up in the federal report. Because fighting it would mean pretending it did not happen. And it happened. I let it happen. That is on me. The second thing Raymond did was stand up at a city council meeting and say, in front of cameras and colleagues and the mayor who had shaken his hand 4 times, that the policing culture he had built in District 7 had caused harm to the community he was sworn to protect. That he had promoted officers based on arrest numbers rather than community trust. That he had dismissed complaints because dismissing them was easier than investigating them. That a man named Amara, a nursing assistant who earned $15.40 an hour, had been saving his son's life for 2 years while Raymond's own sergeant was writing him fraudulent citations. The room was very quiet when he finished. Some of his colleagues never spoke to him the same way again. His career trajectory, which had been pointing toward a deputy chief appointment, shifted permanently. He did not get the promotion. He did not care. The third thing Raymond did was establish the Community Accountability Review Board for District 7, an independent civilian panel with the authority to review use of force incidents, pretextual stops, and officer conduct complaints. Not advisory, binding. With the power to recommend termination and refer cases for criminal prosecution. The board's first act was to review every pretextual stop made by District 7 officers over the preceding 3 years. The review identified 219 stops that lacked documented probable cause. Of those, 104 involved Black drivers. The fines from those stops totaled $41,382. Every dollar was refunded, with a formal written apology from the department. Here is something most people do not know. In the United States, Black drivers are approximately 20% more likely to be stopped by police than white drivers. They are searched at higher rates, even though searches of Black drivers are less likely to turn up contraband than searches of white drivers. The data has been consistent for decades. It is not a secret. It is a pattern. And the people most affected by that pattern are not the ones who make the policies. They are the ones who budget for fines the way other people budget for groceries. They are the ones who teach their children how to survive a traffic stop before they teach them how to drive. They are the ones who give blood every month to keep a police captain's son alive and get stopped and searched on the way home. Raymond understood that now, in a way he had not before, because Amara had not asked him to fix his life. He had asked him to fix the world he lived in. The fourth thing Raymond did was create the Gloria Webb Community Scholarship, named after Amara's mother. Funded with an initial contribution from Raymond's own savings unmatched by the Atlanta Police Foundation, the scholarship was open to any frontline worker, nursing assistant, aide, transporter, or technician, anyone who worked in a hospital or community health setting in a support role and wanted to pursue medical education. Full tuition, full stipend. No strings attached. Raymond had not told Amara about the name. He had chosen it without asking, because some things you do not need permission to honor. The launch event was held in the main auditorium of Mercy Children's Medical Center on a Thursday afternoon in March. Rahman stood at the podium in front of 300 people: doctors, nurses, board members, city officials, and hospital staff from every level of the building. And in the third row, an empty chair where Dale Pruitt used to sit, a deliberate reminder of who was no longer there. Rahman adjusted the microphone. "I spent 23 years believing I was one of the good ones," he began. "My face has been on a billboard. I have shaken hands with mayors. I have given speeches about service and sacrifice and the duty to protect. And 2 years ago, one of my sergeants stopped a man on Interstate 85, searched his car without cause, and wrote him for $117 in fraudulent citations. And I signed off on the conduct report without reading a single word." He paused. "That man's name is Amara. He is a nursing assistant in this hospital. He earns $15.40 an hour. He has been donating his blood every single month for 2 years. Anonymously, without payment, without recognition, without ever knowing whose life he was saving. He did it because his mother taught him that giving blood is not charity. It is responsibility." He looked at Amara, sitting near the back of the room. He had not wanted to come. Dr. Carter had convinced him. "I walked past that man 100 times, Rahman continued. 100 times, and I never saw him. And I do not think I am the only one. I think this city, like every city in this country, is full of people we walk past without seeing. People who hold the whole system together and get paid the least for it. People who are the first to be stopped and the last to be thanked." He looked out at the audience. "I cannot undo what was done to Amara. I cannot give him back the hour he spent on the side of that highway. I cannot undo the fear, but I can change what happens next. And I can stand here and say, in front of all of you, that I was wrong. That my department was wrong. And that being wrong, and refusing to admit it, is the most dangerous thing a person with a badge can do." When he was done, the auditorium stood, not for him. For the idea that accountability, real accountability, is not a weakness. It is the only thing that makes authority worth having. Amara did not stand. He sat in his chair in the back row and wept quietly, not because he was being honored, because his mother's name was on a scholarship, because the words he had spoken in a parking lot at 6 in the morning had turned into something real, because for the first time in his life, someone with power had listened to someone without it. And because somewhere in that room, Dale Pruitt was gone, and the system that had protected him was being taken apart piece by piece by the man who had built it. 1 year later, Amara walked into a lecture hall at Morehouse School of Medicine in Atlanta, Georgia. He was 36 years old. He was carrying a backpack that still had a hospital ID clipped to the front pocket. He was wearing the same shoes he had worn on the night shift, because he had not had time to buy new ones. And he was surrounded by 22-year-olds who had never mopped the floor or donated blood from their own or more sat with a dying child at 3 in the morning. He sat down in the third row, opened his notebook, looked at the whiteboard where the professor had written the first lesson of the semester. It felt like a dream, the kind you do not believe even while you are living it. The Gloria Webb Scholarship covered everything: tuition, books, a monthly stipend. Amara had applied without knowing who funded it. The letter had come from the hospital's education office. Formal, official, no mention of Tyler Holt. He had read it 3 times before he believed it. And there was something else. His mother was alive. Gloria had received a kidney transplant 4 months ago. The donor was anonymous. The costs had been covered through a hospital charity fund that Amara had never heard of before. Dr. Carter had helped coordinate the paperwork. Everything had been clean, official, no strings, no names. Amara suspected. He could not prove it, but he knew how anonymity worked better than most. He had spent 2 years giving anonymously. And now, for the first time, he was on the other side of that wall, receiving without knowing, grateful without a name to direct the gratitude toward. The symmetry was not lost on him. He sat in that lecture hall surrounded by students young enough to be the children he had cared for, and he looked at his hands. The same hands, the ones that had scrubbed hospital floors, the ones that had held the arms of sick children in the dark, the ones that had opened their veins 24 times so a stranger's blood could keep a small boy alive. Those hands were holding a medical textbook now. The same hands, different purpose, same person. His mother's voice moved through him, quiet and steady, the way it always did when Amara needed to remember who he was. Blood is the one thing rich and poor share equally. When you give it, you give life itself. Amara picked up his pen and began to write. 4 years later, on a bright Saturday morning in June, Amara walked across the stage at Morehouse School of Medicine. He was 40 years old. He wore a black gown and a hood trimmed in green. His name was called by the dean, and when he stood, the audience erupted. Not the polite applause that greets every graduate. Something louder, something that came from the gut. He walked to the podium, received his degree, Doctor of Medicine, specialization in pediatric hematology, the study of blood diseases in children, the exact field that had defined Tyler's life. And in a way he could not have predicted his own. He turned to face the audience. In the fifth row, Tyler Holt sat between his father and Gloria Webb. Tyler was 14 now, tall for his age, healthy. His condition had gone into sustained remission 18 months ago, thanks in part to a combination therapy that Amara had contributed to during his residency rotations. The disease that had nearly killed him had become the branch that connected his treatment to Amara's training. Gloria sat beside Tyler. She was 71 now, thin, but her eyes were bright and her back was straight, and she was wearing the same gold earrings she had worn the day she first took Amara to donate blood in Accra. Raman sat at the end of the row. He was no longer a captain. He had left the department the previous year to run the Community Accountability Review Board full-time. He looked older than he had 4 years ago, quieter, like a man who had spent 4 years learning to listen instead of command. Amara looked down at the audience from the stage, hundreds of faces, but he found the one he was looking for. Tyler was holding something up, a piece of paper, creased, yellowed at the edges, torn in one corner from years of handling. The drawing, the blood man, a stick figure with brown skin and big hands holding a red heart. He had kept it. For 5 years, he had kept it. And now he was holding it up in an auditorium full of people, smiling at the man who had once been his midnight storyteller and his anonymous lifeline, and who was now officially a doctor. Amara looked at that drawing and felt everything at once. Every night shift, every pint of blood, every floor he had mopped, every time he had been looked through like glass, every time he had sat with a scared child in the dark and told stories about rivers and fishermen.